Hey everybody, it's Bust with our 100-hour gameplay review of Backpack Battles. And so, over the course of the past 6 weeks or so, I've played about 125 hours of Backpack Battles. I've put out content for it over the course of the past month, and this is going to be our in-depth review after we've got a lot of gameplay into the game. And so, if you're not familiar with Backpack Battles, it is an auto battler. So if you're familiar with a game like Hearthstone Battlegrounds or Teamfight Tactics, to where you are drafting from a pool of units or a pool of items in this case, and then you're going to assemble that collection of things that you've purchased into some kind of big battle army, right? And so in Teamfight Tactics, you're assembling a collection of champions to fight against an opponent. In Hearthstone, you're collecting a collection of Hearthstone cards that are going to battle back and forth. And within Backpack Battles, you are collecting items that you store within your backpack. And then your backpack is full of various bows and arrows and swords and armors and foods and stuff that you would use in a kind of fantasy setting, hand-to-hand combat kind of thing. The interesting thing with Backpack Battles is that to where in a game like Teamfight Tactics, you are organizing your warband on the screen, or with Hearthstone, you're organizing your cards left to right. The main constraint within Backpack Battles is all the items within your backpack take a certain amount of space, and your backpack can only hold so many things. And so you have to micromanage where each item is within your backpack to both make it fit so you can physically use it, but then also to ensure that your items are working most effectively, as they can combine to make more powerful items, or they can be used to enhance the items around them. The other big thing happening with Backpack Battles, and one of the big things to call out with it, is that this is an asynchronous style of PvP game. So as you are playing a game like Battlegrounds, you have to devote 20 to 30 minutes of your day to that one particular game, as you are playing against a consistent set of 8 other players. And so as you battle back and forth, you can't really take a break. You can't stop to think for a prolonged amount of time for any given hand that you're trying to build, and you have to be active and ready in terms of the gameplay going back and forth. With Backpack Battles being an asynchronous type game, what that means is you can sit around, you can think about the shop, you can think about your backpack, you can sit around, rearrange things for as much time as you would like, and then when you're ready to battle an opponent, you just push a button and it finds an opponent for you. So it's very, very convenient in terms of how you're able to use your time. You can do one battle if you have 2 minutes free, and then just set your phone down and move on to something else. Or you can battle out through the entire setting, play a game that typically takes about a half hour to finish in completion. And so that's my overview. If you're not familiar with the game at all, I will play the introductory video up next from Steam. All right, here we go. And so there you have it, the developer's intro to Backpack Battles. Before I jump into my review and my thoughts on the game, I do like to call out the financial aspects of this. If you're wanting to just give the game a try, you can go to backpackbattles.com and play it within a web browser. It is a limited version of the game, so all of the items don't exist within the web version, but you can get a free opportunity to click around, see if this type of auto battler is for you, see if you're up for and into the various inventory management aspects of the game. If you're looking to pick up the full version, it's for $15 on Steam. I think it turns up on discount on occasion. I know as I make this video, that is on some kind of discount as a bundle with Balatro. And so if that's your thing, we have actually covered off on Balatro with our previous review series. You can pick up both of them if that's something that you would like to do. One of the big negatives, and one of the things that I think is a real hindrance to the space of Backpack Battles, is it is only available on PC. Now, it might be also available on the gaming platforms on like Switch and on Xbox Marketplace, but I don't think that that's factual. And from my understanding as to reading on Reddit and the like, this is not a game that will ever appear on mobile. And that's one of the big problems and pain points to the game with me is, as we'll talk about on the next slide, is I think that that's I don't know if there's a way to fix that in terms of getting the game on mobile, but it seems like a huge hindrance that it doesn't exist there. And so, as we were talking about mobile, to me, this is a game that should be perfectly well designed to have an interface on a mobile platform. Just that kind of rich gameplay experience we talked about, where time doesn't really matter. Being able to have that aspect as to where, okay, I'm on the bus, I can play for 5 minutes, I've got 10 minutes before class, I've got 15 minutes during lunch, whatever your time frame is. You can find that time within Backpack Battles, and that is a humongous hindrance to the auto battlers that currently exist out there. If you look at a game like Hearthstone Battlegrounds, you have to devote, at least 30 minutes if you plan on playing the entirety of the game. Looking at Teamfight Tactics, depending on the set, you sometimes need up to 45 minutes if you want to play the whole game. And if you're looking at a game like Hyper Roll within Teamfight Tactics, that used to cap out at around 15 minutes. And so if you're looking for just something quick, something to do while you're, waiting on class to start or waiting on that last 10 minutes of lunch before you have to get back to the grind, like this was a very, very convenient game that could fit in that sense, because you could just sit around, tool with your inventory for a couple of minutes, press the find battle button, and jump on in. And so it's unfortunate that it is PC only, and I kind of get it, right? I don't understand how you would really make the mechanics of this game work on mobile. As you may have seen, the inventories come together. You do have to move the bags that are in the background, and you have to move the items that are in the foreground, and you also need to be able to rotate them. And it just seems like it's very tough to pull that off on mobile. I tried to envision how you would do this with one hand on a phone or with one hand on a tablet, and the grab an item and drag it thing makes a lot of sense. Taking the items and then rotating them does not make a whole lot of sense. I'm not certain if you would ever be able to gracefully accomplish that, or if you could, if it would feel like it was worthwhile. Because I will admit, in a lot of my gameplay within this game, I played on a laptop without a mouse, and it does get pretty frustrating picking things up with a trackpad and then moving them and then trying to push the R button on the keyboard to rotate the items around. I know that on a trackpad you can pick it up and then kind of click out to the right or something, and that counts as a right click, which should rotate the items around. But if I was frustrated on a trackpad and a keyboard, I can tell that I would be super frustrated within the space of playing on a mobile device. And so whether or not this piece of context is relevant to you, I'm not certain, but to me, it's a real unfortunate space for this game in Backpack Battles, in that sense of it seems so perfectly designed for a mobile experience, but the execution of that mobile experience just seems impossible to pull off. And so the next innovative and interesting thing to me with Backpack Battles is the idea and thought of asynchronous battles. And so what the idea and meaning behind this is you don't necessarily have to be playing against your opponent at the exact same time. And so what the game does is it remembers various board states from other opponents that have the same number of wins as you. And then as you hit the Q into opponent button, you play against someone that has also played recently. And so while in a game of, say, Magic the Gathering, we are playing back and forth and I'm directly seeing you and you're interacting with each other, I'm playing against someone that may or may not be active right now. They may not have been active yesterday or within the same patch. And so it's very, very interesting in the sense that we're playing a PvP game. I'm playing against a human physical opponent, but they may not necessarily be here right now. And I'm not too certain how much this has been executed in the past. I know that Reynad's Bizarre game has been in development for what seems like a decade now. They kind of brought the idea forth. I believe a game called Super Pet Battles implemented it first as a game that was physically released, since the Bazaar supposed to come out this year, but who knows? And Backpack Battles has expanded on that as well. And so it's very interesting to me, and that a lot of people don't like playing single player games, right? You would prefer to play like a single player puzzle based game like Slay the Spire, as opposed to playing a PvP card game like Magic the Gathering or Legends of Runeterra. And a lot of that is the human aspect, as to where I want to play against other humans so that I can flex on how big my brain is. I like to play against other humans so we can discuss the game and have a social interaction. I like to play with humans so that we can, perfect decks together and work like that. These are all common things that you will hear. On the flip side of the coin, people do enjoy playing against AI. It wears away at the ladder anxiety, as to where you worry about dropping in rank as other players are better than you. And I put better than you in air quotes. I don't want you to feel like someone is just better than you. That's kind of horrible. But there are reasons that people do prefer to play against the AI. And with this game, it's kind of awkward. I've always kind of been in that PvP mindset, as that I prefer to play against other players. It just always had that kind of community aspect to it, that we were, together doing the same thing, battling back and forth. And you don't really get this out of Backpack Battles. It was a interesting feeling to me that you're technically playing against another opponent, right? Some other human did design the board, but it doesn't really feel like you're playing against a human. It feels like you're just playing against the AI or randomly generated board. There's no like physical way to tell that you're playing against someone else. And so if we look at other auto battlers, you can, or just other games in general, you can like emote at your opponent, and you can have text and chat and things like that. None of those things exist because your opponent may not actively be physically in the game at the moment, and so you can't do that. And so it's been kind of interesting to me, in the sense that I don't have a problem with playing against AI. I don't have a problem with playing games like Slay the Spire or Balatro that are single player only, but it's a very awkward and interesting feeling with this, knowing that you're playing against a sort of human component. But if you told me that we weren't, if you told me that these were just like randomly generated boards, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense to me, because there's been no way to really tell that I'm playing against another physical person. And so the next interesting mechanic coming out of Backpack Battles is the idea of the backpack, the inventory management system. And so again, in a game like Teamfight Tactics and an auto battler like it, where you're generating an army that fights back and forth, in this game you're generating a backpack. And so to the left of the screen, you have the backpack where the items are going to go. On the right side of the screen, you have the items that are available for purchase. And so as you purchase an item on the right, you're going to drag it over into the bag on the left, and then figure out various ways to make it fit and make your various synergies come together. And with this is the first time I've really played this kind of game, and it just doesn't really do it for me. Like, I know that different people like different games, that's completely fine. This is not really the style of thing that I typically enjoy, but that's not to say I didn't have a good time with Backpack Battles. And so it took me a bit of a learning curve. My brain doesn't really process these kind of spatial things well, right? If you were one of those kids that was good at doing a word search in elementary school, this might, really be up your alley, right? If you are very good at scanning through the letters and seeing the patterns and picking out the words like that, my brain just never functioned with that, and I was never particularly good at it. The same thing kind of applies with Backpack Battles. And so what typically becomes very frustrating to me is if you see this bag on the screen, you might want to make some rearrangements. And so you take some time to do it, and then your bag looks good, and then you're really focusing in on it to make sure it looks good before you jump into the battle, and you're like, oh, I see something that needs to move. And so you take another 2 minutes, you rearrange everything, and then you're good to go. You battle, it's been done. And so then you go into the next round, you go into a new shop, you see a new item that might be kind of cool, and you're like, oh, cool. I can see how this could fit in my comp. This can work with my synergies well. Now I have to rearrange everything all over again. And so that you do get into these aspects to where your bag is often very fluid, and you're asking yourself the question, is it worthwhile to rearrange this bag, right? Do I feel like I'm going to get enough payoff, enough dopamine hit out of rearranging this bag to make it worthwhile to jump into the next battle? And that's another place where I really struggled. I had this real like uh, misunderstanding of how I really wanted to piece together the content for this game, because I typically do things straight through. Like I like to be kind of replicating the experience of playing on the ladder. And so I like to grind game after game after game. I like to, make mistakes for people to see. So you aren't just catching a highlight reel of all the really awesome things that Bust did. And so what this kind of led into is like I would be generating a backpack and I'd be like, oh, I see some kind of bonus, something else that I could pursue, something that would look good. Do I want to take another 3 or 4 minutes to just rearrange everything while I'm trying to hold the attention of a viewer? Or do I just want to say, oh, fuck it and push the button? And so it was a real like lose-lose kind of situation for me, in the sense that I can see a goal, I know how to attain it, I don't want to take the time to do it because it's not particularly fun, and so now I'm less likely to win the next round, and it's a bit of a negative experience for me as the creator and you as the viewer. And so, I don't want to call it a complete negative hit on the game. I know a lot of people do really enjoy kind of min-maxing these bags and figuring out the best way to handle an inventory and getting it perfect. And that is something that typically brings you more joy than the actual battle itself. But me personally, the way my brain works, the places that I get enjoyment, I don't particularly find it there personally. And so up next is the physical battles themselves. This was a space that I didn't realize how meaningful it was playing Hearthstone, or I should say playing Hearthstone Battlegrounds, until I came back to Backpack Battles. And so what I mean by this is the kind of visual idea and the visual representation of the auto battle that you're about to see. And so if you played a game like Teamfight Tactics, or you played a game like Dota Underlords, or even just the original Auto Chess, you would have your physical characters on the board and they would fight back and forth with your opponent's characters. It was very easy to visualize what was happening, right? You could see the battle on screen. You could see your character swing his sword at the other character. You could see your opponent's mage blast a fireball at somebody on your team. It was very visually appealing and understanding as to what was happening amongst that combat. And then I used to talk a lot of trash about Hearthstone Battlegrounds. My brother plays Hearthstone Battlegrounds, so I tend to play it a lot as well, so we have something to do together, and it's just cards just blasting back and forth at each other. It looks fucking dumb, if you ask me, right? It's like, what interesting thing is happening here? My rectangle is blasting into your rectangle, and then your rectangle blasts into my rectangle. Like, this is the least interesting thing that I could think of actually watching that I don't just immediately turn off, right? Just rectangles blasting back and forth at each other like we're watching some kind of weird game of Pong. And so where that is going is when you play Backpack Battles, there's not a really great visual indication as to what's happening within the battle. There's not anything to really draw your eyes towards and watch because of just the functionality of how the game works. And so if you haven't played it, you may not be able to really get a good visual on what is happening. If you look to the left of the backpack, you can see this orange goobert that I'm trying to highlight up here that has kind of a yellow or a brighter tint towards the bottom and a darker tint towards the top. And what actually happens within Backpack Battles is everything runs on a timer. So this unit in orange might take 2.5 seconds to activate. So what is happening is as that activation timer wears out, the line moves up, and once the color is fully bright, the unit activates, does its effect, and then it resets back to the bottom where it will kick back up again. And so like all you're really seeing on the screen are these various lines just kind of scrolling up and scrolling up and scrolling up. And it's really kind of tough to decide what you're supposed to physically look at, right? So if we're playing a game of Teamfight Tactics, I'm watching the characters. There might be a tank I want to see how long he survives. I might have a carry with a lot of items that I want to watch just mow down the opposing board. You don't really get any of that out of this game. You can look at the characters and all they do is just like bounce back and forth. They don't have any real animations tied to them. So if you're not going to look at the characters, like you can look at the health bars, which if you've gamed for a long time, you know that health bars are very uh, uh, not accurate. I can't get the word off the top of my head, but if you're thinking of a game of Magic, your life total doesn't really matter, right? Your life total matters when it hits 0. You can be at 1 and be in a commanding position. Like, it's not a good barometer of who's winning the game. Same thing applies with the health total here. And so am I just supposed to like watch all of these bars move up the screen across the various bags? Like, I don't know. It was just very tough for me to like find something to visually latch onto and watch that not only tells me, something as interesting is happening, but also tell me, who is winning, who is doing good, whose stuff is striking better, whose stuff is striking harder. And so to me, there would be like a lot of visual, flashy things kind of on the screen, but nothing to really indicate what is happening. And so, with what sounds like negatives about the bags and the actual battle system itself, is there anything positive to say about the game? And to me, the game was extremely deep strategically. I was not really expecting this. I thought that it was going to be one of these games to where you pick a class and then there's typically like 2 strategies that you can chase down. Once you figure out those 2 strategies, you're just off to the races. And so the way I really kind of approached the game is I did a couple of rounds with the various classes, right? I did an intro series with the 4 classes, then I cycled around them again one more time. Then I focused in on the Berserker class as we tried to approach the Master's rank. And I assumed that there was, just not even going to be any reason to do that real deep dive. I assumed that I was just going to cruise through the game, figure out that great strategy, and be right off to the races. But as we really dug in, as we dove in, I felt like the more I learned, the more I felt like I didn't know, which is a pretty good place to be in terms of the strategic depth of a game once we've played it for a few hundred hours, especially in the sense that it may not have a ton of updates coming to it. I don't know what the update structure to this game is, but if you're really going to be focusing in on these 4 core classes and maybe you add in an item or 2 over time, that doesn't really add a ton of new elements to the game, right? It's not like you're releasing a new set of teamfight tactics to where you replace 45 of the champions. It's the same class and idea over and over and over again for a long time. And I really felt like I barely scratched the surface with the Berserker. I feel like at each stage of the game, the kind of early game, mid game, late game, I was finding lots of decisions that were extremely relevant, not only at the immediate point in the game, but also kind of developing the game for the future. And so, one of the problems that I feel like you run into with a lot of auto battler esque games is you get to the mid game or you get to the near late game and your comp is set, and then there's really just nothing to do, right? You'll spend your 10 gold, you might find that one key unit that you're looking for, but there's like not a ton to do because you're so deep into the game. Your comp is set, your items are set. You can't just sell off half of your team and start rebuilding because it's too far gone at that point in the game. And so it feels like you're just, clicking through your 10 gold, pushing the final button, waiting 90 seconds for the round to start, and then you jump into battle. And I did not really get that feeling in backpack battles. You might, on like the very final battle or the next to last battle, your bag is completely full and you're not really making any upgrades, but you don't get to that point in the game very frequently. And when you do, it feels like a real climb to actually get there. And so while I do feel like I trashed a fair amount on the inventory system, that's not at fault of the game. That's something that's at fault for how my brain works and how I operate and the things that I like. I did kind of trash on the visual aspect of how the battles work, but I feel like the kind of strategic depth to the game, the options within each class, what you're able to build towards, how one item can help you pivot to different builds if you know what you're looking for. There's just a ton of stuff that was unveiled as I battled more through the game that really more than made up for those negatives that I was calling out. And so the final star rating for Backpack Battles, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. And so to me, this is a very well executed game. To me, that kind of 5-star space, how does this get up to the top, is that kind of game that I just want to play on end for thousands of hours, right? This doesn't really have that hook in me to play the thousands and thousands of hours that I would really look to get out of a game like Magic or Teamfight Tactics or Legends of Runeterra, something that really sinks me in. And to me, it's not so much a problem of the game itself as that it's not appearing on mobile. And that's not necessarily a valid slight against the game, right? The game is still very functional on PC, but to me, to have that kind of like perfect game, that thing that's going to keep my attention for years on end, you have to be on mobile. And if that's fair or not, that's up for you to decide. Maybe you don't care about mobile. Maybe you don't play on it. Maybe that's able for you to take it up to a 4 from a 4 to a 5. But for me personally, not being able to experience and access this game on mobile is not only a tragedy in the sense that this is the first one that really and truly feels good. As a auto battler, you can just play with 2 minutes of time, but it's not something as to where you get that full lock-in engagement as to where this is the game I'm playing. This is it. This is the one I'm going to play on end and on end and on end, because I can play it at the gym, I can play it at school, I can play it at work, I can play it while I take a shit. Like all of these things come together in addition to just playing it on PC. And so outside of that, I can't really see it getting up that high. Now, I don't like the inventory management aspects of this game a ton. I find that to be a real frustrating point of the game. Again, you may enjoy it. It's not something that I really enjoy, but I did not find that as frustrating as, say, playing Balatro, right? As we made our playthrough on the 100-hour rating of Balatro, I was just getting like more and more and more frustrated as the game was progressing. Like I really wanted to push up to the gold stakes, and it felt like doing the gold stakes was just like doing work or doing homework or studying for a class I didn't want to study for. And so it just stopped being fun at a certain point, and I really didn't want to push forward. And so, at least with this game, with the inventory management aspects of it, while I didn't particularly like a lot of it, I didn't like being able to see the best option but not wanting to actually go and do it. It wasn't a frustrating experience. It wasn't a bad experience. It was just something where I was kind of like, fuck it, we'll just move on and not worry about it. And so there was that piece to it that was unfortunate, but not that bad. Otherwise, I really like the system here. The merging of the items and creating the classes and doing something similar to the other tripling system in other games, but not quite the same thing. And then having this interesting aspect to where a sword and a flame combine to one item, and a sword and a whetstone combine to another item, which is much more different than a game like Teamfight Tactics, where 3 of the same champion combine into the upgraded version. And so it's very interesting having that more adjacent upgrade style, as opposed to, I should say, horizontal upgrade style as opposed to a vertical upgrade style, as to where you're looking for multiple items instead of copies of the same thing. It was very interesting. And so otherwise, I feel like it's probably worth the money. I would give it the recommendation that you'll probably get your $15 worth if you like auto battlers, and I could definitely see you getting yourself hooked on this game if inventory management is your thing. And so, good stuff. Well done, Backpack Battles. I think you released a wonderful and delightful game. I had a great time with it. I hope you viewers do too. So, that is going to do it for us today. I hope everyone enjoyed the video. Hope you maybe learned a thing or two along the way and you had a good time watching. This is Bustin' Me. Thank you for being here.